Hey everybody, George here with the Keepers Hive, and it's a beautiful day. It's the first week of February. It's about 50 degrees out here, and we're out at our winter location where we have 10 one-queen keepers that are overwintering. They all look great. So we want to sort of do a quick, just a quick summary of how we're doing with overwintering these and what our strategies are, and a little bit about why we think they're doing so well. So what you'll see here is we have a yard full of one-queen keepers, and these are some of the earlier versions, so they don't look as nice and pretty as what most of you guys have now. So, but these are some of our earlier versions, but they're identical structure-wise. So we have two ways that we've been overwintering the one-queen keepers. We've been overwintering with the standard brood box and a deep nuke on top of it, and this deep nuke has 5 frames of honey in it. So on this overwinter configuration, we have 8 deep frames in the brood box and 5 deep frames in the nuke box. We then have a feeding shim that sits up here, and then we have our insulation and our outer cover. The queen excluder is all the way at the top of the hive, so you definitely want to take the queen excluder off in the winter. I like putting everything, I don't like storing stuff in the garage, so I just move the queen excluder to the top of the hive. So, and on this hive, it's also a one queen keeper, but in this hive, we have 8 frames in the brood box, and then we've left our spacer box, our medium spacer box on here, and we've taken off the queen excluder, and there's no frames in the medium spacer box. So this configuration is just 8 deep frames overwintering, and this is 13 deep frames overwintering. So I'm just going to open the roof so you can come in and take a look at what's going on. You can clearly see that that hive is looking good. And this hive over here, again, has a little bit less bees in the bottom because we have frames in the deep here. So there's more bees probably up in the deep here. So the one thing that is really important now is make sure they have enough food. There's a little bit of controversy to how much food, honey or sugar stores the hive needs to survive the winter. Traditionally, you know, we've been told that hives need 80 to 100 pounds of honey to survive the winter, and both of these hives are probably going to survive the winter on about 30 to 40 pounds of honey, and not 80 to 100. Obviously, the one with the deep nuke in it on top is going to have a little bit more food in it than the one with the medium without any frames, but they're both going to survive fine. Over the last couple of years, we've definitely learned that when you overwinter a hive and you basically give the bees less space, you basically don't have any top ventilation, and you put top insulation on the hive, the food consumption in the hive goes dramatically down in the winter versus a double deep with no insulation and with top ventilation. Those hives are just going to burn through the honey to keep them warm, while the keeper's hive and a smaller hive without top ventilation and with top insulation, you really limit how much food they consume. Some of you are familiar with Etienne Tardif up in the Arctic Circle of Canada, and he's done a lot of work over the last couple of years of how best to get hives to survive the winter, and looking at how much food they consume. And even up in Canada, where he's in winters that are minus 50 or 60 degrees Fahrenheit, he's getting bees to survive with less than 60 pounds of food consumption. Again, he's using very thick insulation, a lot of top insulation, no ventilation, a little bit more dramatic than what we're doing out here, but the same principle. Small hives, no top ventilation, lots of insulation, causes the bees to consume less in the winter. And that's our goal, honestly, is to not make the bees need to consume a lot of their stores unnecessarily. But with that said, we still don't want them to run out of food. February is the time of year where the hives start to brood up. We assume that all these hives have brooded now, getting ready for the spring. and that's when the food consumption goes up. So it's not a bad idea to be mindful of making sure they don't run out of food. We have really nice calm bees that are up in their up on the 5 deep frames here. So I can see that there is some honey left in here, but it's not a bad idea this time of year to make sure they don't run out of food. So we're going to just put a little bit of fondant right into this area right here with your feeding shim. This feeding shim I think is 1¼ inches. You can go all the way up to 2 or 2½ inch feeding shim. And all we do is we have Nat's, look how Nat's our butler today. He's prepared some nice pieces of fondant. And all you do is you just put your fondant right on top of the frames. You just put your fondant right on top of the frames like this, so they have some extra food up there to feed on. And we'll take this last piece. And that's as simple as it gets. Do they need this today? They may not. But again, it doesn't hurt to put a little extra food on the top. And there you go. So we put probably a couple pounds worth of fondant in the feeding shim, and the bees will just come up and eat it if they need it. You can take a look inside of this hive, and you can see on this configuration, we don't have any frame. This is our medium box, and we have no frames in this. So basically, they're just overwintering on 8 in the brood chamber. And what we're doing is, instead of a feeding shim, like on that hive, we're basically just putting our fondant right in this medium box. Now, this configuration obviously is going to not be able to have as much honey in it in the winter because there's no frames up here. So you really got to be, you're really only running 8 frames in the brood chamber. So this is a hive that you really want to pay careful attention to, that it doesn't run out of food. And you can see it's as simple as anything. You just basically take the fondant, you put it right on the frames, and then you're done. So this again, these bees look great. I mean, they look absolutely fabulous. This time of year, if you're going to feed bees, you don't want to really use liquid feed. It's too cold to feed them liquid. So any solid sugar, I like fondant. You can make sugar bricks. Some people use dried sugar. I'm not a big fan of that. So either fondant or sugar bricks is probably, or sugar candy is the way to go. If you have a really, really warm day and you want to use a little bit of liquid feed, you probably could get away with that. But again, that's probably a little early for that. You probably want to be using solid feed here.